Welcome to today's video, and today we are taking a look at the Turtle Beach Recon Controller. And if you are an Xbox player or a controller player, you definitely want to stick around for this one. So let's get into it. So first things first, this controller comes in at around $60 or 1,000 Rand local, which is pretty cool because that is around the same price you would pay for a normal Xbox controller. And you also do get more out of this controller, so you're not paying more even though you are actually getting more. Another great thing about this controller is that it works with an Xbox or a PC, and you don't really need any other software or anything else. You just literally plug the controller in and it works. Now in the box you do get the manuals, and then of course you get the controller itself, which can either be in black or in white. And I have to say I am a big fan of the white, even though the black one still looks really good. And then you'll also get your USB-C to USB Type A cable, which is braided and 10 feet or 3 meters long, so you don't have to worry about having too short of a cable, as this is a wired controller. Now when it comes to the design and the features of the Recon controller, this is where it really shines, and this is also the reason why you would actually go out and buy the Recon controller instead of a normal Xbox controller or any other brand. Now the design of the controller is very similar to that of a normal Xbox controller, but because it doesn't need batteries or wireless unit, it actually weighs less than a normal Xbox controller by about 50 grams, as the Recon controller only weighs in around 230 grams. Now taking a look at the controller itself, you have your standard X, Y, A, and B buttons. Your joysticks are where they are on a normal Xbox controller, as well as your D-pad. But if you take a look at the top of the controller, this is where all the extra features are, and these are also the features that are not present in normal Xbox controllers. But before we actually go through all of the features on the controller itself, just bear in mind that you will actually have to connect a headset to the controller itself, as some of the features are actually audio features and can only be activated or used when you have a headset connected to the controller itself. Now to start off all the features, on the far left you have the overall volume that will actually go into your headset, and on the right you have your chat volume, and both of these you can control independently without having to actually go into any programs or any software to change those. And of course you can do that without actually leaving your hand off the controller. And what's cool is it actually shows you what the volume is by dimming the light of these switches, so the more dim the light, the lower the volume of that independent sound. Now next to the volume button you have superhuman hearing, which accentuates the high notes in your game, making it easier to hear footsteps and any other audible cues that are kind of in the high note range. And this is a cool feature, but it does change all the other audio in your game. So this isn't a function that you would want to use at all times, but if you're in a 1v1 situation or just in a tight situation and you want to have that little bit of advantage over your opponent, you can easily press the button and toggle it on and off to gain that little bit of an advantage. And then far on the right next to your chat volume buttons, you have your mic mute button. And as the actual name states, it is to actually mute or unmute your mic. Then between superhuman hearing and the mic mute button, you have mode and select. And mode is used to toggle between the 4 different modes on top of the controller itself. And then select is used to select the 4 different profiles of those different modes, which will be indicated by the cross in the middle to show which mode you're actually in. And the first feature is mic monitoring, and the 4 different presets are either hearing yourself or not hearing yourself in 4 different stages, so it's from off to on in 4 different audio levels. The second mode is EQ, and you can switch between 4 different presets of EQ that they have set up for you. For me, I personally enjoyed the first one for most of the games that I played, but you can easily switch between those for different games that you play to see which one is the best for you. And the third mode is your profiles, and you can save up to 4 profiles on the controller itself. And of course, these are used with the mappable buttons at the back. So as soon as you've mapped buttons, you can save it to a preset, and then you can easily switch between your presets for different games that you actually play. And then the last mode is sense, and what it really does is it actually drops your sense when you're aiming down a sight, which makes it easier for you to control your aim on a more precise level, especially if you're using snipers and you're zoomed in pretty far. If your sense is too high, you'll be flicking all over the place. So with this mode, you can actually drop your sense, get a more precise aim, and then always hit those shots. And then lastly, as mentioned before, if you actually flip the controller over, you do have these 2 additional buttons at the back, which can map to any other button on the controller itself, making it easy for you to actually map different buttons to those that are usually hard to use in most games. So especially if you have buttons that are on the D-pad and you have to use your left stick at the same time, then it's easy to just remap those buttons to these buttons at the back that are more easily pressed than actually removing your finger from the actual thumbstick and putting it on the D-pad and using those buttons. And then once you've actually mapped your buttons for a certain game, you don't have to actually stick with those mapped buttons. You can easily change your profiles for different games to have different buttons mapped to the back buttons on the controller. Now, of course, at this point, I have to point out that it is pretty easy to push these buttons no matter how you actually hold your controller. So that's really cool. And it really does make a difference when you actually map different buttons to these to make it easier to press and sometimes just more intuitive to press than you would with your normal button layout as you had it on your controller. The Turtle Beach Recon Controller really gives you that comfort of a normal Xbox controller, which already is a great controller, and all of the buttons feel really great to press, and with these additional back buttons at the back really makes it a more versatile controller for me than actually just going out and buying a normal Xbox controller. Now, while using this controller, all of the buttons felt really good. The joysticks are really responsive and they flick back really quickly, which is really good. But the only problem I really did have was with the bumpers, as they don't feel that great to press and they kind of have a initial press way at the top of the button and then it kind of just sags in on the rest of the button. So it really does feel a little weird to use those buttons, but the rest of the buttons all felt really great to use, and the shape of the controller and the weight really makes it really comfortable to use even for long periods of time. And I really enjoyed using this controller in many different games like Forza Horizon 5, Back 4 Blood, Rocket League, and even Warzone, even though I don't really like using controllers in shooter games. And the controller in all of these performed really well. It was really comfortable to actually use this controller for all of those games, and all of the extra little features like superhuman hearing actually came in really handy, especially in games like Warzone. Especially if we go into the gulag, you can easily switch to superhuman hearing just to get that slight little advantage over your opponent in a situation like that. Now, I can definitely recommend this controller to anybody who's playing on either an Xbox or a PC, as this controller works for either Xbox or PC, and it is really a good little option, and especially since it comes in at the same price as a normal Xbox controller, definitely try this one out before you actually go out and buy a normal Xbox controller. The shape is very similar, the look is very similar, but you do have these little extra features that really comes in handy when you're actually playing a little bit more seriously, or if you're just looking for something to really just give you that slight little advantage over that of your opponent. And that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you have any questions on this controller, leave them down in the comment section below. I really do go and check those out, and I really do go and answer all of those questions that you guys have. Now, if you're looking to pick up this controller for yourself, I have left affiliate links down in the description below. If you use those links, the channel does get a little kickback from that, which also helps the channel grow. So if you use those links, I really do appreciate it. And then as always, cheers.